Sony's next moves aren't just big, they're huge. We're talking acquisitions, exclusives, anime domination, and maybe even pulling some of the biggest studios out from under their competitors. This isn't just about new games or consoles, it's about reshaping how we experience entertainment as a whole. But here's the thing, is all of this actually good for us as players and fans? Or is it the kind of power grab that could backfire in the long run? Honestly, it's hard to say right now. So let's break it all down. What's happening, why it matters, and what it could mean for the future of gaming. Alright, so there's this wild rumor going around about Sony potentially buying Take-Two Interactive. Sounds insane, right? But here's the thing. There's no solid evidence that this is actually happening right now. Sony even commented at one point saying, "We don't know where this rumor is coming from, but there's no such plan." So yeah, take it with a grain of salt. Now let's talk money, because this is where it gets tricky. Take-Two Interactive is worth around $33 billion as of now, which is no small chunk of change. For Sony to pull off a buyout like this, they'd have to make a massive investment, probably bigger than anything they've done before. And while they've been making moves lately, like the talk about buying Kadokawa, FromSoftware's parent company, this one feels like it might be a bit too big, even for Sony. That said, we're in this crazy era of big gaming acquisitions. Remember when Microsoft bought Activision Blizzard for $69 billion? That deal showed us that these giant buyouts aren't impossible, just rare. If Sony doesn't make a move for Take-Two, you've got to wonder, would Microsoft try to grab them instead? It's all about who can lock down the biggest games and studios to dominate the industry. So, could it happen? Sure, anything's possible in gaming right now. But is it likely? Probably not, at least for the moment. Still, with how competitive the industry's getting, you never know what the future holds. How would you feel if Rockstar became part of Sony, or even crazier, Microsoft? Would that be a win? Or does it just feel like too much consolidation? Alright, let's talk GTA 6, because the latest leaks and details are pretty mind-blowing. Rockstar's next game is shaping up to be a massive leap forward in terms of technology, but as always, it's stirring up plenty of questions too. Here's what we know so far, what's still a mystery, and why everyone's losing their minds over this. So, thanks to a now-edited LinkedIn post from Ryan Woods, a principal engine programmer at Rockstar, we know that GTA 6 is going to feature ray-traced, global illumination. For context, this is the kind of tech that makes lighting in games insanely realistic. Think sunlight bouncing off surfaces, or the glow of neon lights reflecting in puddles on the street. Games like Alan Wake 2 and Metro Exodus Enhanced Edition have already used RTGI. Woods, who's got a solid track record from working on Marvel's Spider-Man and Ratchet & Clank, also hinted that GTA 6 will push the limits of Rockstar's Rage engine. That's a big deal, because Rage has always been the backbone of Rockstar's games, and hearing it's being pushed to new heights means we're probably looking at some of the most cutting-edge visuals in gaming yet. Now here's where things get interesting, and a bit confusing. The LinkedIn post also mentioned procedural generation, which has people speculating all over the place. Some think it's just a development tool to make building this massive world easier, while others are hoping it's something bigger, like runtime procedural generation during gameplay. What could that mean for us as players? Well, rumors have been flying that GTA 6 will let you break into any building or explore an absurdly detailed city. Procedural generation could make that feasible without bloating the game's file size to ridiculous levels. Imagine being able to enter any random house, and instead of Rockstar hand designing every single one, procedural generation handles the interiors dynamically. If that's true, it would be a game changer. Another nugget from that LinkedIn leak. GTA 6 is definitely coming to PC. Not a shocker, but it's nice to have semi-official confirmation. The bad news? If Rockstar sticks to its usual playbook, PC players might have to wait 9 to 15 months after the console launch. That's not ideal, but hey, at least it's coming. The million-dollar question, where's that second trailer? Fans are eyeing December 4th as a possible drop date, since that's when the first trailer hit last year. But there's a wrinkle. Take-Two, Rockstar's parent company, is also releasing a trailer for Mafia: The Old Country next month. They probably don't want to overshadow their other game, so we might see them hold off on GTA 6 news until Mafia gets its moment. Still, with GTA 6 reportedly targeting a release next year, it feels like that second trailer has to be coming soon. Okay, all of this sounds amazing, but let's keep it real. There are still questions. RTGI is incredible tech, but implementing it on such a massive scale might lead to compromises, especially on consoles. Will it look as good as promised, or will Rockstar have to scale things back to maintain performance? So here's the deal. Sony has been in talks with Kadokawa for years, but they've hit a snag because Kadokawa doesn't want to sell in pieces. They're saying, if you want in, you're buying the whole company. And Kadokawa isn't just any company. They're massive in books, comics, anime, and games. But the crown jewel here is FromSoftware, the studio behind Elden Ring, Dark Souls, and Bloodborne. And here's why this matters. If Sony doesn't lock this down, there's a very real chance Microsoft will. Microsoft has been on an absolute buying spree lately, snapping up huge companies like Bethesda and Activision Blizzard. Do you really think they'd hesitate to make a play for Kadokawa? If they did, that would mean Elden Ring 2 or the next big Soulsborne game could end up exclusive to Xbox and Game Pass. Imagine that. The idea alone is enough to give Sony some serious FOMO. But let's not forget about Tencent, because they've also shown interest in Kadokawa. Tencent's already invested in FromSoft. They own a chunk of it, so they're not just sitting on the sidelines. They could easily swoop in and take full control if Sony hesitates. At this point, it's not even just about who wants Kadokawa, it's about who's willing to pay up and play hardball. This is about more than just gaming, though. Kadokawa also owns massive anime properties like ReZero and Konosuba. Sony's already dominating the anime scene with Crunchyroll and Aniplex, so adding Kadokawa would basically make them untouchable in that space. On the other hand, if Microsoft or Tencent gets their hands on Kadokawa, they'd suddenly have a foothold in anime too. That's a whole other layer of... The timing here is interesting too. Kadokawa's leadership has shifted recently, and Tsuguhiko Kadokawa, the guy who was blocking a sale, is no longer in the picture. That's opened the door for these talks to finally get serious. Sony's even sent over a letter of intent, which is corporate speak for, we're about to write a massive check. But the pressure's on, because if they don't pull the trigger, someone else will. This isn't just a business deal, it's an arms race. Speaking of this corporate tug-of-war between Sony, Microsoft, and the industry at large, here's a twist I didn't see coming. Forza Horizon 5 might actually land on the PlayStation 5. Yeah, you heard that right. The same Forza that's been one of Xbox's flagship exclusives. According to a known leaker, Xtaz1S, the release was supposed to happen this past summer, but got delayed. And while there's no word on a new timeline, the rumor says it's definitely still in the pipeline. The idea of Forza Horizon 5 on a PlayStation console is kind of wild, especially when you think about how closely tied Forza has been to the Xbox ecosystem. But it's not totally out of the blue. Xbox has been making moves lately to bring some of its exclusives to other platforms. Earlier this year, Hi-Fi Rush and Pentiment made their way to PS5, and we've already heard that Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, another supposed Xbox exclusive, is coming to PS5 in 2025. So what do you make of this? Would Forza Horizon 5 on PS5 change the way you think about exclusives? Oh, this article is just begging to be roasted. Let's break it down. First of all, let's address the idea that Microsoft's supposed handheld will play PlayStation games. Yeah, no. Sony isn't about to roll out the red carpet and put its exclusives on the Xbox ecosystem. The only reason this hypothetical device would run PlayStation games is because it's basically a Windows handheld, just like the Steam Deck or Asus ROG Ally. Microsoft has been trying to blur the lines between Xbox and Windows since the OG Xbox, and now that they've burned through most of their original talent and lost the console war during the Xbox One era, they're doubling down on Windows as their safety net. Let's be real, this isn't going to be a dedicated Xbox handheld in the way Sony has the PSP or Vita. This will be another Steam Deck knockoff running Windows with a shiny Xbox app slapped on it. It's not revolutionary. It's not even new. It's just Microsoft doing what they've always done, leaning on their PC dominance to stay relevant in gaming. And sure, Windows can run PlayStation games 2 years after they've already launched on PS5. That's because Sony, being the smart business it is, releases its big exclusives on PC only after they've milked their initial console sales. Games like God of War and Spider-Man drop on PC to pick up some extra cash. And let's face it, to give PC players a taste of what they're missing, so they'll be tempted to buy a PS5 for the next big exclusive. So this Xbox handheld won't be some magical device that bridges ecosystems or changes the gaming landscape. Meanwhile, Sony's rumored handheld would give you day one access to the full power of the PS5 library wherever you go. Think about it. No compromises, no waiting years for ports, just PlayStation greatness. The idea that Sony would hand over any part of that experience to an Xbox-branded device is laughable, especially after the FTC lawsuit. Have you heard about the latest update for God of War Ragnarok? Version 0600 just dropped, and it's packed with some seriously awesome enhancements, especially if you're playing on a PS5 Pro. What's cool about it? They've added a PS5 Pro enhanced mode that lets you run the favor quality setting at 60 frames per second. Usually, we have to choose between better graphics or smoother performance, but now we can have both. It's funny because I didn't expect this level of enhancement. But wait, it gets even better. There's a high frame rate mode now. If you've got a VRR-capable display, you can unlock frame rates up to 120 FPS. Can you imagine how smooth that feels? For anyone used to high refresh rate screens, this is a game changer. It makes everything feel incredibly fluid. They also introduced introduced PSSR upscaling. These updates really show how much better a game can be with the right optimizations. We've all been used to picking between performance mode for smoother gameplay or quality mode for better visuals. But what if you didn't have to choose? The PS5 Pro is changing that by making it possible to have both without much compromise. Developers should aim to double frame rates as a standard feature for games optimized for the Pro. Speaking of game updates and the PS5 Pro, have you heard what's going on with Silent Hill 2? It's funny because while God of War Ragnarok is getting these awesome enhancements, Silent Hill 2 is still not quite where it should be on a system like the PS5 Pro. So, the latest patch, version 1.06, just dropped last week. I was hoping it would make a big difference, but unfortunately, it doesn't seem to significantly improve the game on the PS5 Pro. Digital Foundry took a deep dive into it, and here's what they found. In the previous update, the game introduced PSSR support, but it actually caused more issues than benefits in terms of visual quality. For this new patch, the developers at Bloober Team decided to switch back to TSR for performance mode. The good news? Global illumination and reflections are more stable and less noisy now, and that massive disocclusion issue when moving the camera is gone. But here's the kicker. Overall image quality isn't that much different from the base PS5. The slightly better performance might just be because TSR is less demanding than PSSR, not because of any real optimization. Surprisingly, the game actually looks better in performance mode than in quality mode on the PS5 Pro. Quality mode still uses PSSR, which doesn't seem to be a good fit for the visuals the game is pushing right now. It's kind of disappointing, right? Performance is a bit more stable than on the base model, but in terms of image quality, it still leaves a lot to be desired. It seems like Silent Hill 2 needs more work to really shine on the PS5 Pro. What do you think about this? Have you tried playing Silent Hill 2 on the PS5 Pro yet? Let's talk about the rocky launch of Stalker 2 this week. If you've been following the news, or if you're one of the unlucky players who jumped in early, you've probably seen the same issues being talked about over and over. Bugs, performance problems, game-breaking progression glitches. And yeah, that brutal 5 out of 10 review score from Kirk kind of cemented the general vibe. This game wasn't ready. What's funny is, Kirk's review sums up the whole situation perfectly. He called it one for the sickos, which sounds harsh, but it makes sense when you think about what Stalker 2 is trying to be. It's this gritty, hardcore, atmospheric experience that appeals to a very specific type of gamer, someone who's okay dealing with a little chaos. But even for those players, the bugs and technical issues at launch made the game a lot to handle. It's not unusual for a game as ambitious as Stalker 2 to have some rough edges at launch, but this was more than just a few hiccups. The issues were everywhere. Memory allocation problems, NPCs behaving like they'd lost their minds, visual glitches, and progression bugs that could stop you dead in your tracks. Even main quests, like Visions of Truth and a minor incident, had to be revised in this first post-launch patch because some players couldn't even complete them. And while the day one patch fixed some stuff, it clearly wasn't enough. GSC Game World has already promised another big update to drop soon, with fixes aimed at things like weapon balance and smoothing out quest transitions. But even then, they've admitted that the biggest problems, like the broken A-Life system that governs NPC and enemy AI, are going to take more time to fix. That's rough because the A-Life system is kind of the heart of what makes the Stalker series tick. When it doesn't work, the game feels incomplete. And let's talk about the analog stick issues on both Xbox and PC with controllers. Right now, there's no dead zone for the analog input, which means the tiniest nudge on your stick starts moving your character. Sounds minor, right? But if you've ever dealt with stick drift on a controller, you know how annoying this can be. Imagine trying to line up a precise shot or just walk straight, and your character keeps jittering because of a microscopic input. It's frustrating, and for now, GSC Game World is basically saying, yeah, maybe stick to mouse and keyboard. Here's the thing, it's hard to stay mad at Stalker 2. Even Kirk's review, as harsh as it sounds, is filled with empathy for the developers. He points out how much this Ukrainian studio has gone through to make this game. A pandemic, a literal war zone, developing under the kind of pressure most of us can't even imagine. If you could score a game for heart, Kirk says, this would be a 10 out of 10. And you feel that when you play it, the ambition, the atmosphere, the sheer grit of the world they've built. But ambition and heart don't excuse a broken game. And right now, Stalker 2 is a game that feels like it needed more time in the oven. So, the big question, will the patches be enough to save Stalker 2? Alright, so here's the wildest thing I've seen in the past 24 hours. Light of Matiram, this new open-world survival game from Tencent. And let's just say it's not subtle. This thing is a straight-up Horizon clone. Like, if someone showed you a screenshot without any context, you'd probably think it was a new Horizon game. It's honestly kind of hilarious how blatant it is. Why does it look so familiar? Let's break it down. You've got a red-haired protagonist exploring a post-apocalyptic world filled with vibrant environments and mechanical animals, or mechanimals in this case. Sound familiar? Yeah, because it's basically screaming, hey, we saw Horizon and decided to copy-paste it. Even the color palette and enemy designs are eerily similar to what you'd find in Horizon Zero Dawn or Forbidden West. It's like they went through a checklist. Post-apocalyptic world? Check. Mechanical beasts roaming the wilderness? Check. Crafting-based gameplay? Check. Red-haired main character? Oh, absolutely. It's one of those moments where you can't help but do a double take. Like, did Tencent even try to hide it? Okay, to be fair, Light of Modirum isn't a complete one-to-one ripoff. It's leaning more into survival and crafting mechanics. The focus is on building bases, scavenging resources, and capturing mechanimals, which you can train and use. They're also going for a Monster Hunter vibe with co-op gameplay. Apparently, you and up to 9 friends can team up to take down these mechanical creatures in big group battles. So yeah, it's not all Horizon DNA. But when you look at the trailer, the similarities are so in your face that it's hard to focus on the differences. It's like they took Horizon as the blueprint and added survival mechanics on top, hoping that'd be enough to differentiate it. Will it be enough? That's debatable. What's funny is that Sony is reportedly working on a Horizon Online project that sounds kind of similar to this. This isn't the first time we've seen something like this in gaming. Remember Palworld? That game had everyone saying, wait, is this Pokemon with guns? And to be fair, Palworld leaned into the absurdity, almost as if it wanted to be a parody. But Light of Modirum, it's playing it straight, like it genuinely wants to be seen as the next Horizon. There's also that weird moral question. Is imitation flattery, or is it just lazy? Sure, the gaming industry is full of trends and shared ideas, but there's a difference between inspired by and we made a slightly tweaked version of your game. Right now, Light of Modirum feels a lot more like the latter. Plus, Tencent's track record is hit or miss. They're great at pumping out games that look good on the surface, but sometimes they lack the polish or depth to really compete with the big names. If Light of Modirum doesn't nail its gameplay and mechanics, it's going to be hard to justify its existence when players could just, play Horizon. If you want to be ahead of all the gaming leaks and news, specifically PlayStation news, time for you to subscribe. And as always, a like on the video is very much appreciated.